Good day. It's the 8th of July 2025. Joe Finnegan talks with John Wilson and the flag. And now, my phone is inundated this morning. He was on the Shannonside Northern Sound, which covers the North East Midlands of Ireland. And he had a man, Joe Finnegan is the presenter. And how did he get that job? Because he was woke, he was left-wing, and that's what they want. His company is run by Airgrid, who's a mad left-wing, crazy renewable energy electricity suppliers, who has given us the second highest electricity prices in the world and decimated our industry. I should be on the Joe Finnegan show. He won't ask me. I'll get my message out through my channel, please God. So he had a man on called Eamon, who is all for migration. Big in it, says he can see nothing wrong with filling Ireland with migrants. Now, of course, nobody was allowed to question this. But today, Joe Finnegan had John Wilson on. And John Wilson is a good campaigner. I mightn't agree with him on everything, but on the subject of migration and Ireland, I do agree with him. And we've often spoken at the same meeting, and the same meeting, and I'm not in any competition. And I told him one time, you're speaking, you speak away. That'll do once we get the message out there. He's doing a Trojan job at the minute on this subject. I don't know why there aren't others to come forward. He's a retired member from Garda Síochána, just like myself. Maybe it's that job gives us a certain amount of confidence to do this. I don't fully know. But he's a member of an old Fianna Fáil family. I think he has been at some monument to De Valera, and he would be the old Fianna Fáil. But then so am I. My father told me he'd hit me with a spade if I didn't vote Fianna Fáil. But he gave very good reasons, which I've explained elsewhere. Now, John Wilson was told there'll be a man called Eamon on before you, and don't you mention him. So straight away he wasn't allowed to comment on the previous fellow. Now, needless to say, I want to speak to Eamon. Come on here and speak with me. I'll go wherever suits you, and I'll make a video to get your opinion and see where we are so far wrong in opposing mass migration into Ireland. So, anyway, that's the way the programme was set up. So the point Joe Finnegan makes then is that at all these anti-migration meetings, and there's one in Dublin at 12:30 today, I believe organised by Michelle Keane from Kerry. I don't know is that going ahead. I hear it is, but that's another story. But Joe Finnegan objects to the national flag, or Irish tricolour, being used in migration protests. He objects to it. Now, what type of inferiority complex is it that people are told not to have pride in your flag, or not to use your flag to reassert what our people have fought for, what the 1916 Rising was all about? Of course, we all know what it is, but it's no harm to mention to people who don't know. I meet people in Ballybor and Coodtill who watch my channel and are not fully up to speed with these things. It's my job to get that across to them. He mentions the point when he goes to Northern Ireland, particularly around the 12th of July, it's Union flags every place. And in Belfast now, leading up to the 12th, it's covered with them, and the footpaths are painted in the colours of Great Britain. Okay? Now, he says he finds it uneasy. Now, by definition, then, he's saying, well, even excessive use of the Irish flag and Irish colours is also uneasy. So I would ask the question, is the Palestinian flag make him uneasy? What if it was United Arab Emirates flag? Would that make him uneasy? What if it was a Qatar flag? Would that make him uneasy? What about the American flag on the top? What about the Canadian flag? Why is it the British flag? Well, we understand we've had a 300 to 400 years history between Britain and Ireland in which a plantation took place, particularly in the province of Ulster, deliberate ousting of the Irish people and installing a unionist pro-British community. And I have no issue with that now. We've done all that we can do with that, with the Good Friday Agreement and the Stormont Assembly and all of that. My issue is that while all that was going on and all the violence going on, the party that represented the nationalists most and gets the vote is a treacherous party. It invites all these migrants in, having told us they want the Brits out, they want everybody else in, and their Sinn Féin party is dyed in the wool and can't be changed. No point talking about that anymore. But surely the point about the British flag, if it makes you feel uneasy, Joe, is why are we repeating the same thing again? The Irish had no say in what happened. We were beaten. If you go into Griffith's Poor Law valuation, every acre of land in private ownership in all of Ireland was owned by a landlord. This particular place here was owned by Mervyn Pratt of Cabra Castle, and over in Marracloon it was owned by Shirley, and in Cavan it was owned by Lord Farnham. And that repeats all around, and the whole rates and rents was struck on a Griffith's valuation, which gave the real owner, which was a British landlord. Why are we not learning from that and realising that the first thing to do is look after the Irish people, to fly the Irish flag with pride? Many from the Unionist tradition in Southern Ireland will salute the Irish flag, and they see that there were good principles involved, just like there were in the United States, and the Constitution of the Republic of Ireland is partly modelled on the United States. So that's going all right. There's no problem with that. The Orangemen like to march on the 12th of July, and that's their colourful tradition, and they feel British, and that's the way they feel. But why does Joe not address that point? Why is it the Irish flag makes him uneasy? He's complaining about it, and the British flag really upsets him. All right, whatever he has to say about that, that's fair enough. But why is there no learning from that? What if the British flag was flown in Ballaghaderreen? Isn't he from over there somewhere? What if the street of Ballaghaderreen was littered with British flags? How would that affect him? Well, what is the difference in the British flag and a flag from foreign country? And what about the pride flag? Isn't it the new tomorrow, the homosexual pride flag? It's the one that we're to salute. Okay? But John Wilson made the point that the flag is for each country. The flag of Nigeria is for Nigeria. The flag for the United Arab Emirates is for the United Arab Emirates. The flag of Great Britain is for Britain, and where Northern Ireland is still considered a part of it, for Northern Ireland. The flag of Ireland is for Ireland. You won't fly an Iranian flag in Israel today. You won't fly an Israeli flag in Palestine today. So you won't fly an American flag in Russia. So can he explain that? You won't fly an American flag in North Korea. What's this about? The Chinese fly their flag. Does he think more of the Chinese than he does of the Irish? Is it an inferiority complex built into the Irish people, which I tend to think there is? I actually think that in the case of the Northern Unionists, who some of them are left-wing enough, but in the case of the Northern Unionists, they do not have an inferiority complex because of the Orange tradition. They have a slight superiority complex, more so than you'd find in Britain itself. In the case of the Irish, the rural Irish, my neighbours, my friends, they have an inferiority complex. They don't feel they can assert themselves. And our government and our media reflects that. That is one point I would make. But I commend John Wilson for that point. The flag is grand of any country, provided it's flown in that country. And if it's flown in a country like Ireland or in France, it can be as a secondary flag. You could have a community living in America somewhere, and they're Irish, and they might put the Irish flag up on Patrick's Day. That type of thing is grand. He's not talking about that. In America, the flag is flown everywhere, outside homes and everywhere. But not in Ireland. We're being cultured down not to love our flag. So, there's another issue, and it is taken up with Sinn Féin, maybe because of me prompting them about the General Post Office in Dublin, which is the most iconic building in Ireland for our history and the seat of the 1916 Rising, and still a General Post Office where you can go and post a letter. A bustling place, and it has the 1916 museum at the back of it, and I do not believe that museum's there about 20 years. I do not believe that would be left there now, and I think they'll try and take that out. The latest now is they're going to commercialise it. They're going to give shopping malls in it. Why? Because the government, the Rodico government, who's in love with Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, and God knows what is going on, but they can lease out the premises. And so the person that gets a coffee shop in the GPO will be competing with the person around in Henry Street. I think that's completely wrong. And I'll commend Sinn Féin for that. It's also on GB News that what's going on here is an attempt to change the Christian background. In Britain, they want to take Churchill off the money. They want to take the British people off the money and the British Queen, and they want to reinstate it with LGBTQ transvestite men and women. They want the likes of the fella that was on the Olympic Games opening, where he was playing the part of Christ in the opening ceremony at the Last Supper. That's what they crave. And this is happening right here in Ireland. Balbriggan, a town I served as a guard for 2 years and had very fond memories, is totally destroyed with violence from migrants. Totally destroyed. It is unbelievable what that has got, how it has sunk there. And they all voted Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael. Why so, I don't know. Now, in Calais, in France, where the migrants are accumulating to come across, there are people in Calais that can't park their cars are being destroyed and stolen. You can't have a boat moored in the harbour. The migrants will take it and cross to England. So that's my answer. There's also the increase in crime which all this brings in. And I have been around in Ireland in all kinds of capacities since the 70s. I have to look back and say that it was quite obvious in the 70s and 80s that there was a destructive instinct in Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael. I'd be trying to enforce the law. I'd be taking in some fella for serious crimes or sexual assault. And sometimes when they do a certain serious crime, they'd get a long sentence. But an awful lot of the smaller things could have been solved by having a reasonable sentence, like 3 years, given to bad criminals. Keep them in their early 20s. And yet there seemed to be a desire to provoke crime. As the sergeant told us in Templemore, God be good to the man, I don't know if he's alive yet. His first name was Eamon, I won't say who else. He taught us law. Everything is done to placate and facilitate the wrongdoer, and the ordinary person can go to hell. Why are our Irish people voting for the ones they voted for? Well, they didn't give this government a majority. There were 2 short. What is the position? Can we go after these independent TDs who gave their thumbs up to this government with no questions asked? But the hard fact is, in Cavan Monaghan division, the 5 TDs got elected, handed to them as a right. And the voters in Carrickmacross voted Sinn Féin en masse. What is wrong with you over there? Some of them in Blaney done the same. Down in Monaghan, they voted Fine Gael a bit less, weakening them a bit. And they voted the 2 Fianna Fáil TDs and will again. Have we heard anything out of any of them about this? No. Why? Because they are burning to destroy our little country. That's it. And they can get away with it because the Irish voter refuses to change. Refuses. We had an election in which Michael Leahy, a very good candidate, went up down in Limerick, and he didn't get elected. They voted more for the monk with a criminal record than they did for our man in the Irish Freedom Party. I think he's Quinlan from memory, a name like Quinlan anyway. He's a councillor. How can this be? I'll tell you, the Israelis don't let in weak people. The Israelis don't put in a president that's weak. Netanyahu mightn't be the best, we mightn't like him in many ways. And the Americans don't put in a weak person, they put in Trump. But in Europe, it's always Ursula von der Leyen, except in a few exceptions, which is Hungary, Slovakia, Italy perhaps, and maybe to a lesser extent in the Netherlands. The Irish have an inferiority complex. Joe Finnegan has an inferiority complex. He does not like our flag. I call on Joe Finnegan to allow me on his programme. And if he wants to put restrictions, there might be some things he'd be afraid I'd say. I won't break any law on the air anyway, but they can do that, there's no problem. But that will not happen. But yet I can get my word out to thousands of people. And the way to handle him is ring in and tell him he's full of nonsense. Tell him straight, never again to listen to him. Why are we listening to him when he wants to destroy our country? Bye bye, thank you. Comment underneath any way you wish. We'll see you back soon.